Welcome back to the Kriner Scoop. Where it's a channel where we talk about everything, really. But today, we're talking about the XFL, baby. It's football time. So it's been a while since my last video on the XFL, so we got some catching up to do because a lot has changed. So we're going to do a little catch up, basically review the 2023 season as a whole. Round of applause for the XFL pretty much completing the season. We all know that there's one game to go, which is also why we're in this video today, because we're going to be predicting the championship game, because we got in one corner, ding ding, the DC Defenders with the beer snakes and the lemons. And in the other corner, we've got the underdog, the 4-6 Arlington Renegades with Luis Perez, who's been thrown around spring football like hot garbage in the city that hasn't been responsibly disposed of. But we're going to get all into that right now. Alright, so let's start by going into the South Division. 4 teams in each division, 2 teams total. So let's talk about the South. And what has changed since we last spoke about the XFL 7 to 9 weeks ago. First up on my note sheet, we got the Guardians. So the Guardians went from being the worst team in the league to still being the worst team in the league record-wise, but a much more exciting one by the end of the season than when they started. And the excitement started to turn around when they turned to formerly exiled Quentin Dormady, who we did review in week 3. At that point, he was like on the outs, but kind of not. But I really did not see any route for him to have a significant role in the XFL, let alone on the Guardians. But, you know, the team wised up. They dumped Paxton Lynch. They ignored my advice. Good idea when it comes to Paxton Lynch. You should never start Paxton Lynch. And, they turned to Quentin Dormady, and he had like a 6-touchdown game at some point. They're the only team that's beaten DC so far this season, who was in the championship game. We'll go into them in a little bit. And that's pretty much the story of the Guardians. You know, I had low hopes for them. I really thought Terrell Buckley, I thought he was over it by week 3, so I was like, oh gosh, this is going to be a disaster. But no, they rallied. They were very competitive. My favorite part, obviously the highlight of the season for the Guardians, is when they beat DC, and I really love the green strobe lights they had in Orlando. Keep that up. Hoping for more wins next year for them so I can see that effect. But yeah, that's Orlando. Better luck next year. Next on my list, we have Houston, who went from the best team in the league last time we spoke to merely the best team in the South by the end of the regular season with a 7... Oh, there's Ellie back there. Hello. But anyways, like I was saying, Houston went from being the best team in the league to just the best team in the lowly South Division. They did finish with a 7-3 record, but they did not look like a complete team by the end of the season. Brandon Silvers is not very good, and that was pretty much the undoing of them. They made the playoffs, but as we know, I already discussed, they lost. They got upset by Arlington pretty badly. They lost by like 2 possessions. So definitely a weird year in Houston for the Roughnecks. I don't see Brandon Silvers coming back next year, at least if they want to be competitive. So they definitely need some changes. And then our other 2 teams in the South, we have San Antonio and Arlington. I lumped them together because they were duking it out for the second playoff spot all year. They even played back-to-back games, I think in week 4 and 5, and split those games. Though it was never like one team really seized the last playoff spot. It was just kind of Arlington backed into the last spot at 4-6, which was better than San Antonio's 3-7. Story-wise, I guess the narrative, Arlington, they went from Drew Plitt, the rookie, to Slaughterhouse, who was just a footnote in the league at this point is he got dumped. He's back in the USFL, so it's like he was never here. And then they went to Luis Perez, formerly of the Vipers. And Luis Perez has rallied, brought them to the championship game. They upset Houston, so that's crazy. And we'll see if he can complete the journey. Everyone's rooting for him, I'm sure, outside of DC. Everyone loves a good upset. I do, at least. San Antonio, on the other hand, they had a glimmer of hope at one point. They had Kurt Benkert, former Falcons backup. I'm a Falcons fan. So it was nice to see him. Not really. I didn't have any attachment to him. He just had a cool name. But I don't remember him doing anything special. But I do know him. But he played for San Antonio, really threw it all on the line, and then he got hurt. So I hope he's okay and comes back. That would probably be good. And I know San Antonio fans hate Hines Ward. Didn't watch all their games, but that's a consensus. The players love him, but he just can't seem to coach very well, which is unfortunate. And that's the story of the South. So let's look at the records at the end of the regular season. So let's get into the North Division now, which was admittedly a much more interesting division, much more competitive than the South, at least in year one of the third XFL. So competitive, in fact, that a 7-3 team at the end of the regular season didn't even make the playoffs, just because they weren't one of the two best teams, and that's how the playoffs work. But we'll get into that. But first, let's talk about a team that did make the playoffs, and they're actually in the championship game tomorrow, and that is DC, the DC Defenders, who really just came on strong as the season went on. They were undefeated last time we spoke, but they weren't really dynamic on offense. And I just didn't see their defense holding up as the year went on. Admittedly, their defense still isn't the best, but their offense is really just good at controlling the football. Jordan Ta'amu, the training wheels kind of came off his quarterback and bike in like week 5 or so. They started letting him throw the ball, and he's doing well with it. So that's good for him. He's been in spring leagues for a long time, so it's good to see. He always seems to not have the best stats, but good stats, and his teams win games. So there's probably something. He's kind of like the Alex Smith of spring football, and it works for him. But yeah, I have here DC was electric. They got better as the year went on, and Tom, who played well, still questions on defense. I mean, for a 9-1 team, there's not a lot of holes, but they did give up a lot of yards in those last few games to some admittedly desperate teams who are fighting for playoff spots, but still a concern to be mindful of. Though they did handle Seattle in the first playoff game pretty well. They handled Ben DiNucci pretty easily. Let's just talk about them. Ben DiNucci of the Seattle Sea Dragons. So yeah, they got the second playoff spot, which I wasn't expecting after they got off to an 0-2 start. They were just as bad as my Vipers to begin with, but they turned it around. My Vipers, hiss did not. And other thing I have about Seattle is DiNucci's annoying. I think objectively we can all agree about that. But he's also winning football games in this league. Usually he was carrying his offense, so he's pretty good. He's currently, now that he's out of the playoffs, he got picked up by the Broncos, so we'll see if he can stick on the roster in the big leagues, if you will. And that leaves us the last two northern teams, which are the Vipers and the St. Louis Battlehawks. So let's talk about my Vipers first. I think I'll most fondly remember this season for our hazardous winter storm home games. I think the whole first month, every game in Vegas was just like 50-mile-per-hour winds. I remember a shot of the press box just barely hanging on. It's funny. I don't agree that we need a new field. I think Cashman Field, the jankier the better. I think we lean into the jank, and as long as it's safe for people, that we just exploit that. Um, that's just me. I'll also remember this season for us paying Brett Hundley. I heard the rumor is we paid him the most money of any quarterback before the season started, and that was all to do nothing. He competed with Luis Perez, lost, came in for a few games, then I guess got benched or hurt, and then he was just he was just a cheerleader on the sideline. And I mean, it makes sense why he's excited. I think he got paid like $500,000 to do nothing this year. But I don't know if he's coming back next year, if he's in the plans. I don't feel like not nearly enough people are talking about that. Like, what's going on with that? Like, whose decision was that? Because he didn't even play that terribly. It's like, if you're going to pay him that much money, give him a shot. And I'm not even a fan. I like Luis Perez. Oh, I'm going on a rant. And it's all for nothing because Brett Hundley, he's probably not going to get the position because Jalen McClendon, our third-string quarterback, played well the last few games. Like, he was probably the third best quarterback at the end of the regular season behind, like, McCarron, Tamu, and Hundley. Okay, maybe fourth best. But, like, he was really playing really well. More Vipers, more problems. And then there's the Battlehawks. The Battlehawks are the 7-3 team we talked about earlier. They're a good team who just missed the playoffs. They had the best fan base in the XFL by far. I'll say that. If I had to blame anyone looking back, I'm going to blame Brian Hill, the running back, who just could not stop fumbling the football. And, like, he's talented, but, like, come on, dude. And I'm also going to blame ESPN announcers for making St. Louis feel like they had a chance that whole last weekend when the odds were always against them if Seattle won that game at all. That was just dumb. But St. Louis is a really good team. I think they'll come back strong next year. Especially if DiNucci's out. DiNucci's out, McCarron's in, baby. But yeah, that's the South for you. All right, and that brings us to the main question. The championship game. Who's gonna win? Got the 4-6 Arlington Renegades. The Cinderella story has come on strong these last couple games. Or, I should say last one game, because the game before that they lost. So they've been hot for one game, literally. Or the DC Defenders, who are 9-1, who have looked good all year and have only lost once. But to the 1-9 Guardians, so they're capable of losing to anyone. I don't want to pick this team to win, but I'm going to pick and I'm picking the DC Defenders to win it all. This was a tough call. I really didn't want to pick them. I always want to pick the underdogs. It's my main motivation. But I think ultimately Jordan Ta'amu, Abram Smith, the running back, and this is what set me over. Their receiver, Lucky Jackson, who hasn't got a lot of national press because it's the XFL, but him and Jordan Ta'amu just have a fantastic connection. He just seems to be open all the time, and I know he's going to get at least one touchdown in this championship game. And that's just more than I can say about anyone else, especially on Arlington. So yeah, DC's gonna win the first year of the third iteration of the XFL. Book it. Yeah, thanks for watching. We'll be back next year, of course, with more XFL coverage. If you're just feeding for more football content between now and then, well, you're in luck because I'm your guy. During the NFL, we have a fantasy football podcast called Kriner's Kickers. Put a link in the description below about that. It's fun for some people. And then I also cover the USFL, so even before that, we're going to do some USFL coverage. I might drop a video this week, might not, but I'm going to do some coverage of that as well. Just because I love spring football, and I'm a big Breakers fan, so really excited about what McLeod Bethel Thompson's doing over there. But yeah, thanks for watching. Go Vipers. Forgot my team mascot there for a second. Go Vipers. Go Vegas Vipers. Woo!